Today, I'm reviewing Ridley Scott's 2024 film, Gladiator II. Now, this overall will be a spoiler-free review. I will use some clips from the trailers and discuss a few broader themes of the film, but I'll do my best to keep this spoiler-free. Years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. Oh man, guys, I really do hate coming on here and giving yet another negative review. I really don't want to, but I've got to say, I just wasn't a big fan of this film, and overall, I really do think that it is a bit of a mess. I was really fortunate though to get to go and watch this film at a special preview screening. Massive shout out to my friend Murph who got me there. We had a great time and it was awesome to get that experience for the first time in my life. Okay, thoughts on the film. So if you go back and watch my trailer reaction to a recent trailer for this film, my main concern was that it looked like a near identical copy to the story of the original film. This was concerning to me because I think when you're making a sequel to a cult classic film, it's extremely difficult to capture the magic of the original. I think everyone would agree with that. But then I think you make it even more difficult for yourself if you try and do that by remaking or recreating plot or characters that worked so well in the past, because people are inevitably going to compare the new creations to the original ones if they're tied too closely together. A recent example of this for me would be Star Wars A New Hope and Star Wars The Force Awakens. To me, Force Awakens is pretty much a complete remake of A New Hope, but it's just not as good. It's just not as good. It's not terrible because it has enough of the original idea that was close to perfect, but in the new iteration, it's watered down. It's not fresh. And unfortunately, I think Gladiator II has a very similar problem. But instead of building a new Death Star, we're filling the Colosseum with water. And sharks. You could write a whole video essay about the historical accuracies and inaccuracies in this film. I'll leave someone else to do that, but I will say it definitely had quite a lot of moments that had me raising my eyebrows. But back on my previous point. So the trailer for Gladiator II seems to show a very similar story. A man loses his home, he loses his wife, he's captured, he has to fight his way through the gladiator arena for revenge. And Gladiator 2 does pretty much follow this story, except it just doesn't hit as well because we've seen it all before and we've seen it done a bit better. This time there's CGI monkeys, CGI sharks, CGI water, characters that we care about less, and worst of all, the villains just don't come close to what Joaquin Phoenix was able to do in the first movie. On the villains, aka the two emperors, they're just so weak and underdeveloped here. Their main arc is that they're really vain, and they're really dumb, and that's about it, I guess. Towards the end of the film, it does try and go in a bit of a new narrative direction, but it's a lot of politics, a lot of speeches, a lot of talking. There's one duel at the end which is pretty cool, but it just doesn't feel as cathartic as it should, especially when you compare it to the epic finale of the original Gladiator. The politics and plot lines here don't feel nearly as engaging or thought out. In the original film, you're sitting on the edge of your seat because the characters involved are so well designed, they feel real and fresh. Here, sure, Denzel Washington brings some charisma to this area, but so often it feels like the character motivations are shrouded from the audience in an attempt to build suspense, but instead they're just not explored in depth, and it comes across feeling pretty shallow and a little bit unbelievable at times. The story is just so derivative of the first film, but it completely fails to capture that same level of emotion, meaning that the whole movie just feels like it isn't earned. The emotion doesn't feel earned, and overall, I'm sad to say, but the whole thing really does just feel like a bit of a mess. Paul Mescal isn't bad, but he isn't really given anything to do that we haven't seen Russell Crowe do better. It's not Mescal's fault. He's a good actor, but he's given the impossible task of replicating Maximus's character from the first film, but with a weaker script. Pedro Pascal is always great, but there's just little time given for his character to be explored, and I think that's really sad because his character setup had a lot of potential. There's also some really weird editing choices here that really stuck out to me. There's some quick shots that they cut to that just seem to fly by so fast that it feels pretty jarring, but some of them it's like you're meant to be paying attention to. There's also some really huge moments in the film that they choose to cut away from at times that personally I wouldn't. I guess they're trying to build suspense with the audience to go, oh, what happened there? But instead, it just feels very unsatisfying because you're leaving a scene at a specific moment when you want to be dialing in and seeing what's happening. And it feels like this almost happens a few times throughout the film, and there's just very limited moments where you can actually sit and watch something that's truly cathartic and epic. It's like you keep getting taken away from those moments. And now I've had a night to sleep on it, I look back on Gladiator II, and if you don't think about it too hard, it's definitely not a terrible film. I don't think the CGI was a huge worry like I thought it might have been. Yeah, the monkeys looked a little weird, but it wasn't really bad. It was just what you expect in a modern film. Personally, I don't like the overall narrative choices here. I disagree with some of the things that they went with. Some things don't feel believable or don't really make sense, but that could just be me nitpicking. The action scenes were pretty good. Some of the big battles were pretty cool. There is spectacle here to enjoy to some extent. But again, I just can't shake the feeling of comparing it to the original. The original felt so grounded, shot on film. Again, that's my own personal bias speaking, but it just felt so much more gritty and real and believable. Overall, Gladiator II, it just didn't really come together for me, and it's sad, but I think that's pretty inevitable when you attempt to make a sequel like this in this way. I'm planning to do a more specific spoiler-related view in the next few days, so make sure you subscribe if you do want to see that. I also do a bunch of other film and cinema-related content on this channel. So overall, it does pain me to do this, but I was not really entertained, so I'm gonna give Gladiator 2, 2.5 out of 5. But guys, make sure you go and check this one out for yourselves. I could just be getting caught up in the small details, plot things that I don't personally agree with, but other people might enjoy. There is a lot of spectacle to enjoy here, and it does have a great cast. Although the one little spoiler thing that I will say is justice for my boy Gracchus. Gracchus, man. Gracchus got done so dirty here.
Look how they massacred my boy.